Hi, friends. So I'm really happy to have you here again this week. I'm going to talk about an interesting topic that I think will resonate with a lot of you, and that is toxic work environments or the perception of toxic work environments through the lens of burnout. And I'm going to share a couple of stories with you along the way about my experience. And I'm really going to want to get some feedback from all of you because I want to see if this resonates with your experiences out there and what's going on. I think that as we've moved out of a couple of years of very strange working and living conditions, we're all returning to environments that are not as they once were. And some of us don't even know what they were before 2020 because we were in college, or we hadn't entered a traditional quote unquote workforce. And now we're looking at this discombobulated circumstance and situation where everybody's fighting about what work life balance is and who's burnt out more, and putting companies on blast for toxic cultures. And I think we've all collectively started some narratives that, in the best of circumstances, are going to really help change the paradigm of work in this country. And in the worst of circumstances, have given us excuses to phone it in. And here's what I mean. When I was in college, right before I graduated from college, I started working in a large multinational corporation on purpose. And I didn't know what that meant. I was a college kid. I had worked in retail and a factory outlet situation. Uh, Big fish, small pond, literally. I didn't know how corporations worked. I didn't really know what was going to be expected of me. I knew what my job was. I knew who I was working for. I knew what I'd kind of be doing every day, but I didn't understand the rest of the social constructs related to that. I got to commute 3 days a week and then 5 days a week. Once I had graduated, I had my own cubicle. I had my own computer. I had my own work and responsibilities. I had all of the trappings of what you would see in a sitcom as corporate America. And I loved it. I still love it. I loved it. It felt like where I wanted to be. And part of that was the culture of the company was completely aligned with who I was as a human. Their social mission was one that I really supported and could get behind. The products I loved and used religiously. Fan is the best way I can describe it. The people I worked with were my age. They look like me. They talk like me. We all had similar upbringings and backgrounds. They were, for all intents and purposes, my people. Even the ones that were older, we were all homogenous for the most part. And if we weren't, everybody could still find commonality of experience that kind of spanned the differences. I loved working in corporate America. And I worked my ass off. The first 5 years, probably, of my corporate career, it was more nights than not that I fell asleep with my work laptop on my bed, and I would wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning, all the lights on, work in progress. And I would get up at 6 and I would go do it again, over and over and over and over again. I was never exhausted. I didn't have a day where I said, I'm calling in sick. I don't want to work. I rarely took vacation. I didn't want to miss a thing. I loved my job. It was an amazing experience for me until the day that I left that company. I loved it there. And then I moved on to other opportunities and had a variety of years, like what I just described, and years where it was difficult to get out of bed. And I wasn't motivated to do a good job, but I did it anyway because it was expected of me. And where I questioned if being a corporate employee was really the right thing for me anymore. I had dabbled with entrepreneurial options. I had heavily considered going into consulting. I looked for other avenues in those years because I was exhausted and miserable and demotivated and disconnected to the company, the work, and my colleagues. And the phrase burnout didn't exist then the way that it exists now. It wasn't something that we said. And looking back on it, it wasn't that I was working too much and sleeping too little. It wasn't even that I was traveling too much and not seeing my family enough. It was that the identity of the company and my core values were misaligned. And it was exhausting working inside of a business and with people who did not share that commonality with me. And what I found over the course of the 20-ish, 25-ish plus years that I have been working inside of corporate America, or corporate global national companies to be more exact, is that the periods where my core values and the companies were misaligned are where I felt personally the worst, where my personal relationships suffered, where I was always exhausted and short-tempered and looking for a way out. And in the seasons where everything was aligned, our missions were the same, our purpose was the same, the people I was surrounded with shared common values with me, that was when I had unlimited energy and I could work endlessly. And I hopped up out of bed every morning excited to go to the office. And if a Saturday was required, it was no big deal. And what I learned through all of these experiences, especially coming out of the last season I'm in, where I've made a very significant change from very large multinational company to a startup, is that it's fully within my ability to stay in the excited, energized, cup filled up, happy work environment. That it's completely up to me to exist in that space, because all that it requires is for me to have awareness about my environment and pay attention to when it changes and constantly check in with myself and say, is this still a good fit for me? And is this still a good fit for them? So I personally, even though if you look at the definition of burnout, you could say I've experienced it, I believe that I have not. I believe instead that I've experienced periods of time where my values have been misaligned to the values of the company and the people I work with. And that, my friends, has been exhausting. So what is it then? Because around the world since 2020, we've all been screaming that we're burnt out. So what's really happening? Well, my point of view is that we all pressed a really big pause button in March of 2020. Everybody had a chance to look around from the inside of their homes and say, what is really my priority? What is important to me? How do I want to be treated? How do I want to spend my time? And now, years later, many people have spent all of this time doing things, spending time with people that are misaligned to their core values and what's important to them. And further, those of you that have just started on your career, took whatever job you could find because the way to find a job was materially different for you. You did it through screens. There weren't any job fairs. There was a lack of internships, at least in the traditional sense. And you took the opportunities that were presented to you. You didn't have a chance to be selective. So am I giving you a free pass? No, I am not. I am, however, acknowledging that your circumstances were not the same as mine. And that for some of you, you did whatever it took to get out of your parents' house, to stand up on your own 2 feet, to do what you needed to do to move forward with your life after college. Here's the thing. You have decades of work ahead of you. You have the opportunity right now to enjoy the rest of your working life if you want to. And for those of you that are further along in your career and you firmly believe that you are burnt out, this podcast is for you too. Because the thing is that the advice I'm going to give and the tactics I'm going to lay out, they apply to everyone. You can be a brand new employee just starting out a few months into your very first corporate job, or you can be a seasoned veteran. Either way, the symptoms, exhaustion, disconnection, not caring too much about the consequences, less interaction with your personal life, seeing friends, seeing family, sleeping more, being sick all of the time. These are all symptoms that the environment that you're working in is not a good fit for you. And the good news is there's a simple fix. It is really easy for us to make a change. You just have to be brave enough to do it. We as humans are wired to do the thing that is easiest. And for many, what's easiest is to stay in a job that pays the paycheck that you know how to do and keep your head down. And you'll be the martyr and you'll suffer and not enjoy yourself because it's a lot easier than looking for a new job. Here's what I'm going to say to you. You may not need to leave your job. You may need to reframe the narrative. So here's how we're going to lay this out. I'm going to tell you what I did because I think that it's important, and I'm going to compel you to do the same. And I'm hoping that you do, and then we can kind of all start to share with each other on social what we come up with, because I think that you'll start to find that there's some common themes. So when I hit a rough patch, man, I think it was 2017. Yeah, it must have been 2017, 2016, 2017. I just come out of all that merger and acquisition activity. I changed jobs a bunch of times. I had bounced, instead of the same large company I worked in, I had bounced around their subsidiaries a bunch, and nothing fit. Nothing fit. And I thought maybe I just need to go. That very first company that I worked for was really aligned to my core values, and I enjoyed working there, and maybe I just can't find that pocket anymore. And so I sat down and I said, let's do a little exercise. Let's imagine what the ideal workplace is for me. And I wrote everything down. If I were to start Melissa's Incorporated, what would it be like to work there? And I laid it all out. I visualized who would work there, what the leadership would be like, what would be important to them, what kind of work I would do, what I was able to do both professionally and personally. I visualized what my family life was like. I visualized how much income I was making and what could be possible in the future with that income. I got specific. A part of that was even, what does a typical day look like with a schedule? It included things like being able to leave during the day to pick up my kids from preschool and bring them home. It included things like business travel once a month because I was a mom with 3 small kids and needed a couple of nights in a hotel room once a month because kids are a lot in general. It included what was the start of my now very clear core values. What I had laid out was an organization that was built on trust, integrity, ethics, fairness, transparency, and radical candor. Shout out to Kim Scott Best book on the planet. If you haven't read it, here's my little tip and recommendation. I laid it all out. It took me a while. There was a lot of scratching out and restarting. I got really clear on what that ideal state would be. And then once I had laid that out, I used it as a checklist and said, what do and do not I have today? And what was surprising about that exercise was that I had a significant amount more, yep, you got it today, than I thought. I had started to build this negative narrative in my head that it was a miserable place to work. And because I was constantly telling myself that it was a miserable place to work and that I was being taken advantage of and et cetera, there was a lot of negative talking. I had built that narrative and that reality in my head. And when I stepped out of it and literally looked black and white at what I want and what I have right now, what I realized is that well over 50% of it I had. And so then what I was able to focus on is where the gap was. And was the gap in an area that was so significant, it overshadowed what I had. At the time that I did that exercise, the answer was no. And what it allowed me to do was get out of my own way. It allowed me to be able to stop that negative spinning wheel that I had going on. And it allowed me to very realistically and analytically say, things are pretty okay here. Based on what you're looking for right now, based on your ideal work environment, based on your current circumstances, you're pretty good. Stay put. Work harder. Don't be so hard on everybody. And that's what I did. And then interestingly enough, about a year after I did that exercise, so it must have been earlier than 2017, circumstances changed again. And I was not sleeping and I was very stressed and I was very sick all of the time. And for a long time, I just wrote it off to having small kids and their germ factories. And then I thought, it might be worth my while to look at that list again. And so I pulled it out and I went through the same exercise. And what I discovered was less boxes were checked now. And not only were less boxes checked, some significant ones, specifically in the core values area, were unchecked. And that's when I knew it was time for a change. That's when I knew that what was happening to me physically was a manifestation of the change in my environment and that I needed to do something, make a different choice. And we did, and the roads led to different paths, and I moved out of that company and that role and was able to press the reset button. And that list has come with me through every decision I have made since then. And every time I forget about that list or I say it's not important anymore, I find myself in situations that create the exact same experience, AKA burnout, every single dang time. It happened to me again in 2020 and 2021. And as soon as I lifted my head up and said, hello, you have this list, you have this criteria. Why are you ignoring it? As soon as I did that, I said, oh, you know what? This is on me. I've got myself into a situation that I don't need to be in. And then we started figuring out an exit strategy. So you can call it burnout if you want. That's totally up to you. It doesn't have to stay that way. And it's not necessarily your company's fault or yours. It's really a misalignment of expectations and reality. I was listening to Leila Hermanzi this morning, and she was being interviewed about her hiring practices. And she said something very profound. She said, we have small companies that are startups and they have very aggressive growth targets. And the people that do the best inside of our companies want to work a lot. And they believe in the mission and the products of the company. And they are willing to do whatever it takes to be successful, both for themselves professionally and for the business. They will sleep at the bottleneck, quoting Elon Musk. They believe in the companies so much and the products so much and care for the customers so much that it lights them up to work. Those are the employees that are successful in her companies. The employees that are not successful in her companies are the ones that want a predictable day every day, that want to come in at 8 and leave at 5, that want a lunch break and 2:15s, that don't want to work any overtime, don't want to call at dinner, don't want to work nights and weekends. It's not that her work environment is toxic. It's that there is a profile of human that is a good fit for her companies and one that is not. If somebody that expects a 8 to 5 and consistent demands on their time goes to work inside of one of Layla's companies, they'll declare it's toxic because their personal priorities, their core values are misaligned to the company they work in. That individual will tell you that they're burnt out. That individual will tell you all of the wrongs that have come from the company. Did they pick the wrong job? No, they just made a mistake. And you know what? So did the company, because they should have seen it. This is stuff you can screen for in an interview, but you know what? Sometimes we miss stuff. It's what you do when you identify that you're in the wrong place. You're somewhere that's misaligned with what's important to you. It's what you do then that really matters. Now, for those of you that are still very new to your career, this is a pretty hard thing to do because you don't have enough experience under your belt yet to kind of create a list of never do I ever want to work in a place that's like this again. It's hard to make that list because you don't have a comparison point. So what you can do is what I did and imagine what the perfect environment would be for you to work in. Where would you work? What would it look like? What time would you start? What time would you end? What would you do while you're there? What would meetings be like? How would you communicate with each other? How would you spend your time? In meetings all day, working alone, working in small groups? What sort of work would you be doing? How would the leadership communicate to you? Would you have direct access to the CEO? Spend time imagining the perfect, if you could pick it from the sky, experience. And then create a profile of your manager. What do they need to be able to do for you to work well with them? Do they need to be a clear communicator? Do they need to be invested in your development? Do they need to have a big network so that they can help you find out opportunities whenever the need arises? Do they need to be hands off or do they need to be a micromanager? You can create vignettes of exactly what you're looking for without having the experience of living through corporate life. You need to tap into the art of the imagination and you need to craft your reality for yourself. And now, once we all have this perfect picture and we're able to assess our current circumstances against what the perfect picture is, if we look at that from a fact-based place and say, wow, these are really misaligned, and this is why I'm feeling burnt out, this is why I don't want to go to work, this is why my health is suffering, I need to make a change. That's your own personal call to action. And that making a change can be anything. It can be changing departments. It can be completely changing the function that you do. So you could do the same job. Let's say you're a project manager. Maybe you just stop being a project manager in marketing and you go be a project manager in sales. Change departments, same job, just different leadership, different people. It could be that you change job functions altogether. I don't want to be a project manager anymore. I want to be a designer. So I'm going to go get the skills to be a designer, and then I'm going to ask for them to give me the opportunity. You could do that. You could leave your company. You could start looking for another job. You could stay put and wait it out and continue to assess whether those boxes are filling up or getting vacated, and what your tipping point is. If you've decided that you're going to go outside and you're going to look for a job, that checklist becomes your criteria, your screening criteria for where you apply. This is not an exercise where you go into LinkedIn and you search for the job title that you want, and then you apply to all of the things, laundry list down, that have the job title, and then hope that you get an interview and figure it out as you go. No. What you're going to want to do is you're going to say, this is my criteria. And so where do I want to work? And you're going to research those companies. You're going to say, who has core values that I can get behind? Who has a good reputation for leadership? Whose business is stable or growing? You're going to do your homework. You're going to talk to people that you know. And if you identify companies that you want to work at and you don't know anybody, you're going to lean into your network until you are referred to somebody who refers you to somebody who refers you to somebody who refers you to the person that works at Meta. And you are able to talk to them and say, what's it really like working there? I want to make sure that it's a good fit for me before I throw my hat in the ring for a position. You're going to do your homework, because let's face it, you've got a job, you're getting a paycheck, you're good at it. Nothing's wrong, except that you're not feeling great, but you're in a stable situation. So you have the luxury of time, so you can actually sit down and be strategic and think about, what is my next move? This is a chess game, folks. It's not a soccer match. Yeah, I know, bad analogy, but you're playing chess. You're playing the long game. You're going to sit there for days or weeks and try to decide what your next move is. You're not getting pressured from the defense to kick the stupid ball up the pitch. So be strategic. And if you don't know, if you're like, I don't know where I want to go work, you know what you are going to do? You're going to go talk to people. You're going to go lean into your network, and you're going to say, who have I not talked to in a while? And I'm just going to learn. I'm going to learn about their company. I'm going to learn about their job. I'm going to ask them who else I should talk to, because I want to find opportunities for this thing, or I want to learn about that industry. You're just going to start talking to people. The more conversations you have, the more clarity you're going to get. You are not going to get clarity by sitting behind your screen and staring at LinkedIn or Google searches, or going to ChatGPT and looking for the solution to everything. And you're definitely not going to get clarity if you're sitting on TikTok or Instagram or Facebook and diving into other people's social profiles. There is no clarity there. The clarity comes from real life conversations where you get to have a back and forth, where you can gather information about what it's like to work in other places and determine if the grass is really greener. Remember, you're not in a hurry. You can be selective. And then when you're comfortable, you can tell people that you trust that you're casually looking. Refer to yourself as a pocket listing. I'm not on the market, but for the right price, the right job, at the right place, I might consider it. That intrigues people. When you actively have conversations and you just kind of let it drop, like, I'm super good at that thing, and, the right thing comes up, I'll consider it. They keep you in mind. You need to remind people what you're good at so that they remember when an opportunity comes forward to recommend you. So you're going to do your research. And then once you figure it out, once you say, yep, did my research, these are the 5 places I want to work, these are the sorts of jobs that I want to do, apply away if there are open roles. If there aren't open roles, it doesn't mean that there aren't vacant positions. So go into your network, find the people that work there, ask around. Say, I'd love to learn from John Smith, who's the head of the project management office, about what it's like to work at Apple in project management. Can you introduce me? And then talk to John Smith and just say, hey, I just want to learn more about it. Maybe one day you'll have an opening and we'll be able to chat about something real, but here's my value proposition. For all you know, John needs to hire somebody and he just doesn't want to put it out on LinkedIn. Having conversations continuously keeps you top of mind. And once you have your top company list, you need to continue to vet and research. You need to continue talking to people. You want to make sure that it's going to be the right fit for you. All of this forward looking action reduces the feeling of burnout. Sounds crazy, right? But here's the thing, you're going from stuck to unstuck. Whether you've done your analysis and you've decided to stay, you now have clarity that you're in a good environment and you just need to reframe the narrative for yourself. And if you have gone through the exercise and you have clarity that this place is really not aligned to who you are and what you want to be and where you want to work, and you start taking action to find a new spot, you have the peace of mind that there is a next step, that you are taking action to change your circumstances. It immediately improves your outlook. It immediately lifts some of the weight off your shoulders because you no longer feel trapped. You know exactly why you feel the way that you are feeling, and you know what actions you need to take to make an improvement. Relief comes from taking action. The symptoms of burnout, or misalignment, as I like to call it, continue to get worse while you sit in moments of inaction. When you wallow in your feelings, when you continue to bemoan that you're exhausted, or you're working too hard and nobody notices, or you spent another night working through the night and nobody cares and nobody's grateful, you just feel worse. As soon as you have clarity around what you want to do, the symptoms subside. Now, do not be tricked by this, because if you have decided that it is time to move on and you start taking positive forward action and things start to feel like they improve at work because your mindset is shifted and your focus is somewhere else, it does not mean that your checklist responses have changed. It just means your outlook has. So before you abandon your search, before you stop having conversations, go back to that checklist and make sure that it's still true. Because even though things might feel better in the near term, it's mostly because you have a different outlook. And that outlook is because you're taking action to change your circumstance. So be very careful, because your mind can trick you. And remember, we like to do the easiest thing. And so when our mind, we start to feel better and we start to feel less burnout because we're taking action to do something else, which is the hard stuff, then our mind is going to say, oh, look, it's getting better over here. Go back to the easy path. Stay here. It's comfortable here. There's no risks. Stay here. And then what's going to happen is you're going to end up right back where you started, but maybe even worse. And then you'll have to repeat these steps all over again. So do not be fooled by your mind telling you some mistruths. Do not be fooled by the lift that you're going to get by taking action and think that it's actually getting better at work. Because the reason that you felt the way that you felt from the beginning was there was a misalignment between who you are and what you need and what the company is and what they're willing to offer you. There's nothing wrong. It does not mean your company is bad. It does not mean your manager is bad. It does not mean that you have bad coworkers. It does not mean that you are a bad person. It just means that you two are no longer the right fit. It's kind of like dating. Sooner or later, you either get married or you break up and you find a new partner. That's what working is like, except none of us get married because we don't end up into contracts that we can't undo. It's just a perpetual situation of dating, and breakups are hard and they're uncomfortable and nobody likes them. But generally speaking, you are better off on the other side of it. So my call to action for all of you is a few things. One, let's try to reduce the amount of time that we're talking about burnout and instead talk about being misaligned. And it's a conversation around, are we aligned or are we not aligned? And if we're not aligned, what symptoms are telling me that and what should I do? Okay, so let's not wallow in the country's focus on burnout and instead really focus on our alignment and if it's there or not. The second thing is I want all of you to do, if you are feeling what we have been describing here, is to visualize your perfect scenario, what it would be like to work in that perfect company for that perfect manager doing the perfect job. What is your life like inside and outside of work? Do that visualization exercise we talked about a few minutes ago. Get it on paper. And then turn it into a checklist and see how closely your current circumstances match. And then decide what to do from there. Decide. It'll allow you to do two things. Either start looking at outside or reframe your narrative and have you have a different mindset, forward-looking, positive outlook on your current circumstances. You don't have to be burnt out. You do not have to be exhausted. You do not have to feel stuck. All of these things are fixable. You can figure it all out very easily. It doesn't take much effort. What it does take is intentionality. What it does take is consistency. What it does take is brutal honesty with yourself and some bravery. I'm going to say this a lot, and I don't know where it came from. I heard it years ago, but hope is not a strategy. So do not spend your time hoping that things are going to change. The visualization exercise and then making a decision on how to act, that's a strategy. Hoping will get you nowhere. Intentional analysis and decisions and action will take you as far as you want to go. If any of this resonated with you this week, friends, please share with somebody that you think could use it. There are offers aplenty if you want to get started on your job search. So check me out on Instagram and my link in bio, and you can find the offers there. And I just want all of you to know that you are strong and wise and brave. And I believe in you.